elephant. He gave me Rome for Mother's Day. My strength flows ever on. My son Noah built a new ark, and I stood proudly at the helm as we sailed on a soft summer day. I turned myself into myself and was Jesus. Men intoned my loving name. All praises, I am the one who would say, I sow diamonds in my backyard. My bowels deliver uranium. The filings from my fingernails are semi-precious jewels. On a trip north, I caught a cold and blew my nose, giving oil to the Arab world. I am so hip, even my Arabs are correct. I sailed west to reach east and had to round off the earth as I went. The hair from my head thinned and gold was laid across 3 continents. I am so perfect, so divine, so ethereal, so surreal. I cannot be comprehended except by my permission. I mean, I can fly like a bird in the sky.
It's so good to be here with you.
Oh, my sister, good to be with you.
It was wonderful. I was looking for Camille. Camille, are you here? And I started walking the line. It was just so wonderful to see the people who wanted to come and be with us. My good brother, Gene Peters, is here with his people. Yeah, absolutely. And I had so when we talk, when I'm sitting here talking to you, we're not speaking English, because any one of you that have been to London, any place, not to mention Bristol or someplace else, not to mention some country part of England, you know damn well what you hear, you don't understand what they're talking about. You don't. I want to go to the loo. They go, what the hell is that? I have to shit. Oh, okay. We don't. It's true, Jeff. We don't speak English. We speak American. And in speaking American, they had to learn us. They had to learn our language. We know that the food, and I say it all the time, and it's true, I would starve to death before I would eat Kentucky Fried Chicken. There is not a white man on earth that ever fried chicken.
You would think.
I'm not a friendly person.
But you have friends.
I'm fortunate that, I'm polite, but I'm not friendly. But our good friend, Dottie Height, in Cincinnati, many, many, many years ago, there was, I said that, and thank you, because I said that to some sorors, and I said, Dottie Height, and they looked at me. And I said, you can't tell me you're going to be a Delta and you don't know. But there was a situation, Cincinnati Reds were owned by a racist. And she had made some really racist remarks. And the head of NCNW was encouraged by money. And that was sad. I mean, they had to fire her at dinner and had invited the head, what they did to my son. She wasn't doing, that wasn't correct for the world to see. And I'd like to think that when all, for lack of a better word, the shit hits the fan, you're still gonna stand up and do the right thing. And our people have, the history of our people is a great history. And it's our duty to tell that story. It's not, oh my goodness, it's difficult now. It's a great duty. I'm not using the word very well. I tell you a guy, and I don't know him either, General Sullenberger, who was flying a plane. And he was flying the plane, and it was his duty. it wasn't courage that made him land that plane. It was his duty. And when he landed that plane, he did something else that I just like to think that if I was there, I would do that. He walked back, the plane was drowning, and he walked to the back to make sure nobody was there. And he walked back, and then he walked back again. He said, "Is there anyone here? Come forward." I like to think that that was a duty, and it wasn't like, "Oh my God, this is sad." It was like, this is who I am. How will I look at myself when I don't do what I do? You got another problem. So I'm going through it. And
And there's no reason for you to use the table of contents because it's more fun to split every page.
My mother and my aunts were all Deltas. And in the old days, when you joined Delta Sigma Theta, in the old days, my mother's in a Beta chapter, Knoxville, Tennessee, Knoxville College. And you had to graduate from college before you could be taken over. We've changed that since, and I'm glad. But the speaker of graduation that year at KC was going to be Mary McLeod Bethune. And of course, Soror Bethune was our great soror. And they wanted her to be able to give the Deltas their special handshake. And so when they took her over the day before, and so that when Miss Bethune spoke, they were able to give her, the handshake. And my mother said it to me, and it's one of the reasons I learned to love Delta way before Delta was going to be bothered with somebody like me, was she gave her the handshake and said, "Welcome, little sister, good luck." And it was just so sweet. Let me read a poem I do have.
Classic Nikki Giovanni.
Right on.
Read the poem.
Speaking of my mother, it was my mother. It's called I Married My Mother, because I did.
All right.
I did. My father was an idiot, and when he finally died, my mother and I didn't learn to drink until about 30 years ago when I moved to Virginia. And it's because Gus was an alcoholic, as my son here knows. And Gus died, and I was sitting there talking to my mommy drank beer, and Gus, and I was drinking coffee. I drink coffee. And I said to her, Mom, you should have married me. And she said, well, baby, if I had married you, how would I have gotten you? Which is what took my mind into, we have to find a way for humans. Well, it would have saved a lot of trouble, but I married my mother because things made me sad. And that's one reason I'm not friendly. Things made me sad. A lot of things that I saw made me sad. And I learned way, way, way long ago, I don't cry. I'm learning. I learned at 74, I learned to cry. And learning to cry has been a great relief. And for any of you who have high blood pressure, most likely if you learn to cry, you could do better because you're holding things in. I said that to my doctor. He doesn't believe me yet. And I said, no, I've given him a gift. I laugh easily and I soothe feelings. Except once I fell in love with my 8th grade teacher and spent most of my life trying to feel safe again. Though maybe I'm safe now, after almost 30 years, which is as long as I lived with my mother. Maybe this is not a poem. Maybe it's something else. Maybe I just wanted to show my father that he needn't be cruel. Maybe I just enjoyed buying the house he had to live in, showing her she should have married me instead of him. Or maybe, since we all soon will be gone, I should be happy I found my mother and someone else who loves me. What else really matters? Of the march. Our other did not understand us, so we went our separate ways. The time had come. Black women would no longer wait. We marched. We marched for the vote. We marched against lynching. We marched against bombing and burning. We marched for dimes, which the country took over without ever giving us credit for the idea. And let me just stop here because people don't realize that the first March of Dimes was in Knoxville, Tennessee on Gay Street by Delta Sigma Theta, Alpha Beta Chapter. And when they saw, they did it with the Roosevelt dimes. And when everybody saw what wonderful, they did what white people do. They took it over, and the next thing you knew, marching down was supposed to be their idea. You get sick of that, but there was another. But you do get sick of that. Yeah. We march for better housing, for the pig project in Mississippi. We march for the first family planning project in Baton Rouge, which was burned down by bigots. We recognize you cannot be anti-abortion while supporting capital punishment. By what right must I birth him that you put him in the electric chair or in prison for life for a crime he did not commit? We, Sisters of Delta Sigma Theta, stood in the past. Dorothy Height was mentored by our great soror, Mary McLeod Bethune. Every president, from FDR to LBJ, had a Delta in his kitchen cabinet. Gene Noble famously boarded a New York train to put the power of DST with Daisy Bates and the Little Rock Nine. We stood for the future with Lillian Benbow to own a satellite in the sky, to be the first Black Greek organization to make a film with dignified images of us on screen. When there was a need for a voice, our beloved soror, Barbara Jordan, led the defense of the United States Constitution and therefore the impeachment of the president. We are great. Our sister sorority remains strong and committed. We grow stronger on the love we share. We marched 100 years ago, and we will march 100 years from now, because we are Delta Sigma Theta. We stand for the good and the right.
To be deaf, but to be deaf and Black. And so each of us in our marginalized communities have the responsibility to understand that however your marginalized status is, that's not the only way to be marginalized. So, Nikki?
Now I know why I got invited to speak at the Architect. I never did understand why the deaf school would invite me to come. It was you. I remember being invited. I came, you know. I went to Sing Sing prison too, you know. But when you was, I was like, oh, that's why they asked me to come. I'm glad you did.
No, we have to figure this one out, y'all. We have to figure out how our own sense of being victimized is addressed. And we don't forget that there are folk who are not exactly like us who are being victimized as well.